So we're at the start window for GDevelop 5, and we're going to create a new project. Now, when I create a new project, I have some choices of projects that have already been started for me. But when we're first learning a new engine, sometimes it's easier to see what the foundation of the engine is when you start with an empty game. So I'm going to start with an empty game, but before I do so, it'll be far easier if you choose the right folder to put this in now before you create the project. So I'm going to call this demo 1. This is my first demo. And we're going to choose empty game. And then there's a couple of places I'm going to focus my attention when I create a new game. Notice that the project menu has already opened up for me automatically, and I'm going to go to game settings first. And in game settings, there's a couple places that you may want to focus your attention. First one is properties. So if I go to properties, here is where I can actually give my game a name. So I'm going to call this demo 1, and then I could change some other settings here. Maybe I'll put in my author name. I could also set the resolution of the game now. Just keep in mind that changing the game resolution has an impact on the playability of your game. So if you want really high resolution, it will mean your game runs a little slower. And if you have a really small resolution or low resolution, it's kind of hard to see what's going on in your game. So you need to find a good balance. And I would say 800 by 600 is a good starting point for people game design. So I'm going to apply this. And now I'm going to go to the next menu option. Global variables is a place where you can add variables to your game. A variable is a way to store information. So something that would apply to everything in your game. Every object will have access to this variable. So for instance, maybe you want to have a score. A score is usually something that's consistent throughout the game, and you want that score to be retained regardless of what object you are. So score would be a great thing to store as a global variable. I'm going to create score, and I'm going to hit apply. Now I have a variable. And then I could go change the icons that are displayed for the game when you create executables, but I'm not going to do that for now. And then in the future, when you create pictures and sounds and things like that, you go to resources, you'll get a list of those over here on the right-hand side. And if you click on one, you'll see details about that resource. So it's kind of an all one-stop shop for all of the resources in your game. Now, notice that when I close that, nothing's open. It looks like I don't even have a project open. But if you look up in the corner up here, you can open the project manager again, and then I can go down to the next category here, scenes. And the reason I don't see anything over here is because I have no scenes in the game. So I need to create a scene. I'm going to add a new scene. And if I click right now, it's just going to open that scene. But there's something I want to do first. First, I want to click on the little three dots and I want to rename this scene to something useful. So I'm going to call this level 1, hit enter, and then I can click on this now to open up that scene. And when I open up the scene, right away you should see things have changed quite a bit. The project menu has gone away, though I can open it up at any time. And now I have scene properties. That's what's over here. Now I can adjust these a little bit, but they're probably fine the way they are. And this black box right here represents the visible area of your game. So that 800 by 600 pixel view of your game. We're going to start by adding a new object, and I'm going to start with just a fundamental object such as the ground. But if I'm going to create ground, I don't really want to have to keep duplicating the ground over and over and over again. I want to be able to just add a ground and make it as big as it needs to be for my scene. So to do that, I'm going to create a tiled sprite. A tiled sprite is a sprite that as I make it bigger, the fundamental image behind that sprite repeats or tiles, and it can tile both horizontally or vertically. Now I'm going to give this object a name. It's always easier to name things at the beginning than to change them later on. So I'm going to start, we'll call this the grass ground. And I should probably, though, also say tiled because in GDevelop, it doesn't really make it easy to know what kind of an object you have. So I think by saying tiled grass ground, it's very clear in the future that this is a tiled sprite. And then I could go load an image, but in my case, I'm actually going to create an object. So I'm going to create and say edit with Piskel. It'll open up Piskel in a browser. Once again, very important. Choose a good name for this at the beginning. It's far easier to name it now than to change it later. So grass ground will be my tile, my grass. And I'm going to go to the paint bucket. I'll choose a brown color and I'll fill that in. That's not brown enough for me, so let's make it a little red. There we go. And then if I wanted some grass at the top of that, I'll go change that to green. And then I'm going to draw an outline for the grass here. So maybe I'll just start drawing an outline and notice that it shows me where I need to match up to on the other end right here. So I'm going to try to get it to match up. If I don't like what I just did, I can do Control Z to undo. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to try to make it match up nicely right here at the end. Okay, notice it's a little smoother this time. And when I'm ready, I can double check that I have a name here and then save it. And now I have a picture. Now I forgot to fill in the grass. So fortunately, I can just click Edit, open it back up, and I'm going to choose the eyedropper to get that same green color. And then I'll use the paint bucket to fill that in. And now I have kind of my completed grass capped ground. I'll save it and apply that. And now I have one object up here. And to add that object to my scene, I can click on it, drag it down. Once it's in position, then I'll click on it and notice I get handles. I can rotate or I can scale in different directions or in both directions. And I'm going to scale it horizontally. I'll drag it out and notice that because this is a tiled sprite, it repeats the image as I'm scaling it out. It doesn't stretch the image, it repeats the image. And that's the difference between a regular sprite and a tiled sprite. If you scale a regular sprite, it will stretch the image and make it larger, smaller. So that is why I chose a tiled sprite for this one. Now, for this video, I'm just going to do real basic stuff. And we've reached kind of the end of this segment. But before we go, we need to make sure we save our work. Very important to save your work. So I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to give it a name. And it gives it just a default name of game, but I am going to be more specific than that. I'm going to call it Demo 1 because that's the name of my game. And I'll save that. It says project properly saved. That's a good sign. Now, if I close my project and get back at the start window, or if I was to reopen GDevelop later on, I can say open a project, go find the folder and find the file that you were working on, and then click on that, say open, and you're back working on your project. Enjoy learning GDevelop.